come along with me today as I rank the top science fiction and fantasy stars of the 1970s. I think this list is going to surprise you. Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things that we enjoy. I'm Jim, the father of this show, and I'm bringing to you another top 10 list. This series where I'm working through the biggest and brightest stars through the decades of science fiction and fantasy, looking both at TV shows and film. I've got the 1970s on display here for you, and there were some big films here, especially in science fiction, but fantasy shows a little bit of flair as well. And I had a little fun with this here because, in honor of the 1970s, as I mention each person and I hit their biggest shows, appearances, I'm going to give a description of those shows and their roles in just 7 words. 7 for 70. It was kind of fun trying to get these things to be just right, and I think I gave you everything you need to know about each of these roles. And it's going to move along pretty fast, so let's jump right into it with an honorable mention. Yep, just one. I'm going to give you an honorable mention, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but this is the only woman who makes the list from the 1970s. I looked, I tried, but I'm looking for a body of work and things that really make a lasting impact. And I've got just one. And it's maybe not the one you're thinking of. That one will come in the next decade, but this one belongs mentioned here, a breakout role, and I'm giving a shout out for honorable mention to Carrie Fisher. Now, Carrie Fisher, of course, shows up in 1977 Star Wars as Princess Leia Organa. Rebel princess fights Empire, delivers Death Star plans. You got to count Death Stars, one word. And she also had an appearance in 1978, the Star Wars Holiday Special on television. Again, Princess Leia Organa. Leia honors Wookiee Life Day with heartfelt song. Give it up to Carrie Fisher. That's our honorable mention. Now, again, moving from the bottom to the top, number 10 kind of goes hand in hand with Carrie Fisher. I got Mark Hamill here. He's got the same 2 appearances in the 70s, Star Wars, where he plays Luke Skywalker, Farm Boy becomes hero, battles Galactic Empire. And then the Star Wars Holiday Special in 1978, again, Luke Skywalker helps celebrate Wookiee Life Day. That TV special, I watched it as a kid, live on television. It was actually kind of entertaining. For number 9 on the list, we move to someone else who comes along with them, Harrison Ford, but he's above both Carrie and Mark for a reason. Harrison Ford's got more credits to his name. First, we've got The Possessed in 1977, a made-for-TV movie. He plays Paul Wingham. Teacher battles demonic forces terrorizing a school. Then 1977, just a little later, Star Wars comes out and he introduces us to Han Solo. Rogue smuggler helps rebels defeat Galactic Empire. He's also in that Star Wars Holiday Special in 1978, where Han aids Chewbacca's family while evading Imperials. But then he slips in one more movie in the 1970s, The Frisco Kid in 1979. He plays the role of Tommy. Outlaw crosses paths with wandering Polish rabbi. Yeah, it's a fantastical Western comedy. That's number 9, Harrison Ford. Now we get to the really more serious roles of the 1970s. And number 8 is Charlton Heston. He appears in Beneath the Planet of the Apes in 1970, playing the role of Taylor. Astronaut discovers mutant cult beneath ape civilization. This has got to be the weirdest Planet of the Apes franchise movie, trust me. Then we've got The Omega Man in 1971, where he plays Robert Neville. Now, this is based on the same book where we get the more recent I Am Legend. And the book was I Am Legend. Lone survivor battles plague-infected nocturnal cultists. It's a pretty decent movie. 1973, we've got The Three Musketeers, where Heston plays Cardinal Richelieu. Cunning Cardinal schemes to undermine the Musketeers' loyalty. Soylent Green comes out in 1973. In this sci fi flick, he's playing Detective Robert Thorne. Detective uncovers horrifying truth about food supply. And in 1974, a disaster film, Earthquake. He plays Stuart Graff. Massive earthquake devastates Los Angeles, causing chaos. For number 7, Roddy McDowell comes back to visit us again. We had him in the 60s. He's big again in the 70s. Starts off with 1971, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. He plays Cornelius. Talking apes flee Earth's destruction, face persecution. Then he comes right back in 1972 with Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, but a different ape this time, Caesar. That sound familiar? Intelligent ape leads revolution against human oppressors. In 1973, the franchise continues with Battle for the Planet of the Apes, and he reprises the role of Caesar. Ape leader struggles to create peace after war. His fourth film of the 70s is also in 1973, but very different. The Legend of Hell House. Benjamin Franklin Fisher is his role. Psychic confronts deadly spirits in haunted mansion. Love a good spook thriller. And then we go back to Planet of the Apes, this time a TV series that came out in 1974 where he plays the ape Galen. Friendly ape helps fugitive astronauts evade capture. Roddy McDowell, number 7. For number 6, a name you may not be as familiar with, Doug McClure, whose star really shines in the 70s, but you don't really hear much about him before or after. First, we've got The Land That Time Forgot in 1974, where he plays Bowen Tyler. Shipwrecked survivors battle prehistoric creatures and barbarians. 1976, At the Earth's Core, he plays David Innes. Explorers discover lost world ruled by monsters. Then we get a sequel to the 74 movie, The People That Time Forgot, which came out in 1977. He reprises Bowen Tyler, and here's the synopsis. Rescuers search for lost friend in prehistoric land. Okay, don't count the words too close. I'm playing a little fast and loose with my rule. One more movie for Doug McClure. 1978, we get Warlords of Atlantis, which had the alternate name, the original name, Warlords of the Deep. He plays Greg Collinson. Underwater city hides secrets, monsters, and dangers. Halfway through the list, we've got some big names coming to you here now. Starting with number 5, literally big, David Prowse. Prowse was basically the Arnold Schwarzenegger of his day, and he's got this big bodybuilder physique and gets put to work in a lot of cool ways. We start off in 1970 with The Horror of Frankenstein, where, of course, he's playing the monster. Reanimated creature wreaks havoc in scientists' experiment. Then he appears in the big, disturbing, groundbreaking dystopian sci-fi flick A Clockwork Orange, 1971, in the role of Julian. Loyal bodyguard aids sinister, vengeful aristocrat. He appears in 4 episodes of The Tomorrow People, a TV series in 1973. It was a 4-part set called The Medusa Strain, literally parts 1, 2, 3, 4, where he plays an android. Artificial being follows sinister master's deadly orders. Then we get back to the monster sort of thing in Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell in 1974, where again he's the monster. Asylum experiment creates terrifying, stitched together creature. And we finish up his appearances in the 70s in these genres with Star Wars, where he plays Darth Vader's body. If you didn't know this, originally he was going to be the voice too, and they did a switch after all this was done and brought in James Earl Jones' rich, dark voice because David Prowse's voice wasn't what George Lucas really was feeling. But here's what I have. Masked Enforcer crushes rebellion with Force. David Prowse, number 5. For number 4, I'm bringing you William Shatner, who, of course, was number 1 back in the 60s. He's still up high here with a number of big appearances. The Horror at 37,000 Feet, a 1973 TV movie where he plays Paul Kovalik. Supernatural terror haunts passengers on doomed flight. Kind of similar to what he did on A Twilight Zone back in the 60s. Now, Star Trek, of course, had its 3-year run in the 60s, but it gets the animated series in 1973 and 74, where Shatner voices Captain James T. Kirk. Brave captain leads Starship through cosmic adventures, and it just kind of feeds all these young budding Trekkies with more stories. Shatner appears in an episode of The $6 Million Man in 1974. I loved the show as a kid, watching them as they came out. The episode he's in is from season 1, Burning Bright, episode 17, where he plays Josh Lang, a Steve Austin imposter. Astronaut's mind unravels after cosmic energy exposure. Then he's got the movie The Devil's Reign in 1975 in the role of Mark Preston. Satanic cult seeks stolen artifact for revenge. Not sci-fi. But let's get back to sci-fi with the 1977 creature feature Kingdom of the Spiders. He plays the role Dr. Robert Rack Hansen. Town overrun by deadly swarms of spiders. Arachnophobes beware. And we finished the 70s with Star Trek The Motion Picture, 1979, where Star Trek goes big time. And of course, he's playing Captain Kirk. Enterprise captain confronts mysterious cosmic intelligence threat, proving this Star Trek thing, this will work on the big screen too. And because it did, we get so much more Star Trek, and we still have things coming out to this day. For number 3, Leonard Nimoy. See, Shatner and Nimoy have flipped in these decades. Why? What does Nimoy bring? Well, there's one particular thing that gets him higher than Shatner this time. But it's not the first one. Mission Impossible, 1969 to 1971. So that was on his list from the 60s, but it finishes in the 70s. In his role of Paris, Master of Disguise aids impossible covert missions. Great show. 1973 is in a TV movie called The Alpha Caper, where he plays Mitch. Ex-con masterminds elaborate gold heist scheme. It's a heist flick. Star Trek, the animated series, of course, 1973 to 1974, has Spock as well, and Leonard Nimoy is voicing it. The logical Vulcan officer explores strange new worlds. But here's the movie that puts him over Shatner in 1978, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Now, this is a remake of the film from the 50s, but this version's better. He plays Dr. David Kibner. Psychiatrist dismisses paranoia, but aliens invade. And then we finish the 70s with Star Trek The Motion Picture, 1979. He's playing Spock. Really, this movie is all about Spock. Spock seeks logic, faces cosmic consciousness. Love it. But we've got 2 left. Who have I saved? I wonder if you'll be surprised by these. I love both these actors and their roles. Number 2 is Christopher Lee. We start off with The Creeping Flesh in 1973, where he plays James Hildern. Scientist's discovery unleashes an ancient evil horror. Then The Wicker Man, the original film. Not that one that came out not that many years ago. This was a classic in 1973. He plays Lord Summerisle. Pagan lord orchestrates sacrifice on isolated island. Then we've got The Three Musketeers in 1973, same film Charlton Heston was in. Christopher Lee plays Roquefort, scheming swordsman, aids Cardinal in Musketeers' downfall. They're the 1-2 duo of bad guys. And then The Four Musketeers in 1974. He reprises his role of Roquefort. Ruthless enforcer continues Musketeers' deadly battle. But then one of his best roles of the decade has got to be the 1974 James Bond flick, The Man with the Golden Gun. He plays Francisco Scaramanga. Deadly Assassin duels James Bond for supremacy. Christopher Lee, what a class act actor. But number one, someone Christopher Lee did a lot of films with, Peter Cushing. We've got the 1972 movie Horror Express, where he plays Dr. Wells. Alien creature terrorizes train passengers in Siberia. Then The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires in 1974, where Cushing plays Professor Van Helsing, which he played so many times. Ton of these Hammer horror films where he's playing Van Helsing. In this one, Van Helsing battles vampires with kung fu warriors. Cool. Then Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell in 1974. Now, David Prowse was in this movie, but here we've got Baron Victor Frankenstein. Mad Doctor creates monster in insane asylum. Then we've got At the Earth's Core, 1976. This is another movie you heard earlier on the list, as Doug McClure played in this one. Peter Cushing, he's playing Dr. Abner Perry. And here's the synopsis. Scientist discovers lost world beneath Earth's surface. Okay, At the Earth's Core. That kind of tells you everything you need. The final movie of the 70s that Peter Cushing is in, Star Wars. 1977, he plays Grand Moff Tarkin. Everybody thinks of Darth Vader as the big bad guy. It was Tarkin in this movie. Ruthless commander destroys planets with the Death Star. Such a strong evil guy. He told Darth Vader what to do. Y'all forget this. Of course, I just love the fact Peter Cushing is right there when Star Wars begins, and Christopher Lee comes back decades later to jump on in and get in on some of that. So good. That's my list from the 70s. What do you think? Share your thoughts down in the comments. Any key actors or actresses that you wanted to shout out there? I know somebody wants to say Sigourney Weaver. I just said the name. Not enough in this decade for it, but you wait. She's coming. But who else? Anyone you want to say? And any thoughts on the ones I did share? Any of these movies you just, yes, I love that one. Share your experiences. I love to see them. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to give us a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Look down in the show notes for all the ways you can connect with Zach and I. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.